Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a gentleman coming in from a country that I've actually never spoken to anybody in before. So it's a rarity for me. Mr. Matt Sucha coming in from Slovakia. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Darren, thanks a lot for having me.
I pronounced that correct because you gave me about a 5-minute explanation of the background of your name and how you were in an interview in Buckingham Palace and they were calling your name 2 or 3 times and you're thinking, who is this person? Then you realize it was you. But Matt, greatly appreciate you jumping on the podcast. You're the CEO and founder of MindWorx Consulting, and you are now an author of a very soon to be released, as we're recording this podcast, it's early November. By the time this goes live, it's already been released. It comes out on the 11th of November. Book called The Hidden Yes, which is all about consumer psychology, which we're going to talk about today. But first of all, welcome to the podcast. Love to know a little bit about your background. Where did it all start?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me once again. You know, my journey to becoming an author was an interesting one because it started some 14, 15 years ago. At the time, I was studying to become a mathematician, actually, an actuary. Wow. So my future was at an insurance company, calculating premiums and reserves and things like that. But, you know, that was a pragmatic choice. But somewhere deep in my heart, I was always fascinated by entrepreneurship, by sales. And I kept reading a lot of books. And one day I came across a book, Predictably Irrational, by a gentleman named Dan Ariely. I suppose many of your listeners will be familiar with the name Dan Ariely. He's like this best-selling author of books on behavioral economics. And I read the book and I fell in love with behavioral economics. So this was at the university. And from that moment on, I spent all my free time reading all I could, learning all I could about the topic of consumer psychology and behavioral economics. I finished my studies. I got a job as actuary. At the time, I was working in Vienna. And 3 years in the job, I caught myself just daydreaming about helping companies out there leverage the insights from consumer psychology. And then I woke up from my daydream and I saw that I'm still sitting in front of my PC with a huge Excel sheet there. So I stood up and I went to my boss and I told him, well, my friend, I have to quit. I have to found my own business. And this happened in 2015, so exactly 10 years ago. And the idea back then was that I would be helping companies leverage the insights from consumer psychology to become more successful at sales, communication, marketing. But very early on, I realized that no one was really interested in my advice, which was an unpleasant surprise. But looking back at the experience, I'm not really surprised. Zero experience and just a passion for the topic. And I thought, well, what if I didn't try to sell consulting services, but training? And it turned out that selling training is much easier than selling consulting. And that's how we got our first clients. And, as they were listening to us for a whole day, sometimes 2 days, speaking about consumer psychology, they also got excited. And that's how we got our first clients. And so now looking back after those 10 years, we were super fortunate to have worked with some of the biggest insurance companies, banks, and telecoms across Europe. And along the way, we've become the global leader in consumer psychology training with thousands of people who went through our training across 4 continents. We're also licensing our methodology. It's called the SURF method. We have now licensed trainers in 15 different countries. Yeah, and I thought, well, probably it's time to write a book about what we have learned and about how people can actually take these fascinating insights and turn them into results. my journey started with a book, and I thought, well, maybe the next step is also a book. And so that's how the Hidden Yes was created.
Wow, what a fascinating backstory. Because as you were talking there, I was thinking of the number of podcasting agencies that reach out to me to say I've got this fantastic guest, and as you were talking about actuarial services, and I could just imagine you sitting there in front of the massive screen with a spreadsheet doing all those calculations. I often have people coming to me and say, "Oh, I love your podcast on financial literacy and all this sort of stuff," and they're promoting to have an actuary come on this podcast to talk about stuff. And hey, here it is. I've actually got an actuary on the call.
So this is a first, but never take a proper actuary on a podcast. That's my advice as a former actuary. It might be a heavy episode.
Well, it might well be, but what I am fascinating though is I mean, you mentioned the Dan Ariely book there, predictably irrational, and I mean, I've read that a number of times, and I think it's one of the key books that people in sales and marketing should read. And it's interesting that people are predictably unpredictable, and sometimes unpredictably predictable, and sometimes predictably predictable. Um, I'd love you to talk a little bit more about, I guess, your story of moving. You had a passion for the consumer psychology. You started to talk to organizations about perhaps the consulting, but that led you to the training. What were some of the perhaps challenges that you needed to deal with and overcome coming from that background, and maybe not necessarily having the credibility at that time to provide the training or the backstory? How did you handle that? Because was it passion? Was it persistence? What do you put it down to?
I think the biggest challenge was exactly as you said, lack of credibility, because no one wants to work with someone, a company with zero experience, with zero credibility. And that was the biggest challenge, and it's a chicken and egg problem. So
Mm,
if you don't have credibility, no one wants to work with you, and then you have no credibility because you have no projects. And I think there were, and again, exactly those two things that you mentioned. So it was persistence and it was passion,
mm,
because it's much easier to get people excited about anything if you are
yeah.
passionate about it. And that's what's getting people excited to this day. When they listen to either me or some of my colleagues speak on stage or give a training or on a podcast, they
Mm,
can see that we truly believe in consumer psychology. And and then when we start telling stories of successful projects, and how small shifts in communication achieved huge results, that's
mm,
what gets people excited. I
mm.
can tell you what were some of the pivotal moments in this 10-year journey. One of them was in 2016, with our first client. This was a financial advisory firm.
Yeah.
And it was a pure coincidence that I got to speak to a guy who was quite, a low-ranking advisor, but he got excited about what I had to say, and then he introduced me to his boss, and the boss actually gave me the opportunity to conduct my first ever training. And I was there, standing in front of a room full of super experienced financial advisors who had heard everything about sales. And
Yeah.
I was preparing to teach them something about consumer psychology, and it turned out that they loved it. And then the word spread, and I conducted more and more trainings. So this was the very first kind of key moment. The second came in 2017, where we partnered with an NGO actually, and we
Hmm.
helped them raise more money for a charitable cause. Just by changing a few words in a text message, because they were sending out text messages, and we managed to get an increase of 55% in the response rate just by changing a few words in the text message. And
Mm,
this was our very first measurable result. And then, I was able to come to a client and tell them, well, look, and by the way, this is a case study we did a couple of months ago. And as you can see, just changing a few words created this huge result. And then the third thing that really put us on the global map of behavioral economics, consumer psychology. And this is the moment when Dan Ariely comes on stage once again, because we managed to partner with Dan Ariely and create, not only Dan Ariely, also Rory Sutherland, an amazing mind from Ogilvy in the UK. And we created this online masterclass, Behavioral Economics and Psychology in Marketing. And that got a lot of traction because you had Dan Ariely as a speaker, Rory Sutherland, Sam Tatum, an Aussie actually, in the masterclass, and myself. And this gave us a lot of credibility and a lot of recognition across the globe. So these were the three very important moments that helped us gain much more credibility and much more recognition, also, outside of my country and outside of my continent.
Love that. Love that. And there's a lesson there for salespeople and sales leaders in that you may not necessarily have the experience. And sometimes people going into a new role or a new organization don't have the credibility yet, and you've got to try and establish it. And sometimes the only thing you do have is a level of belief in yourself and belief in a vision you've got and a deep passion for the subject that you're actually working on. So the fact that it would have been easy, I think, to give up and stop, but there was something that was pushing you forward to say, hey, I'm gonna stick to this for the long haul, come hell or high water, and look what happens. Doors start to open, which is phenomenal.
And I think I'm very grateful to actually consumer psychology, because we have to practice what we preach. And I'll give you a specific example, because and that later became one of the main pillars of what we do, main pillars of our methodology, of our philosophy of how to sell and how to convince people.
Yeah.
Very often, your customers don't need more reasons to say yes. They need few reasons to say no. And this is the first fundamental mistake that we see, even experiences people make. I see that you're hesitating. What do? I push harder, and I give you more benefits. I give you more reasons to, I don't know, buy from me, to sign up to something, and so on.
Yeah.
And people never ask themselves the critical question, why not? What is holding my customers back? And that's what we started doing very early on. So we'd ask ourselves, so why wouldn't they want to get into a pilot collaboration with us? Well, because they are afraid that we have no credibility, and plus many other reasons.
Yeah.
And consumer psychology and everything that we do teaches us, and we teach them to others, is that, well, don't focus on motivating your customer. First, identify these barriers and address them. And that's what we started doing, So when I walked into a room with a chief sales officer or chief marketing officer, I knew that one of the main uncertainties, one of the main barriers would be, well, this guy doesn't have much experience. And I could do one of two things. So I could either wait there and hope they would never ask me, so can you please tell me about your past projects, your experience? And I would be there like hoping, no, please don't ask me that. And sometimes they wouldn't, but it doesn't mean that that the worry wasn't somewhere in their heads.
Yeah.
Everybody had that worry. Or I could just address it up front. And I could just walk in and during the conversation, tell them, well, Darren, the truth is that we are at the beginning of our consulting journey. And I'll be very honest with you, we don't have experience with working with banks, but I can assure you that we will be working hard as we can to prove to you that we are good enough. What does it suddenly do? You are addressing this concern, and it builds your own credibility because you're not trying to hide it. And if you are the one asking me about my credibility, I'm on the defense. But if I bring it up first, well, I can do whatever I want with it. And it can work in your favor. And this is a consumer psychology at its best. Small, tiny changes in how you put things, how you say things, when you say them, can have a huge, huge impact.
So just on that, because I'd love to delve into some of the books and talk a bit more about consumer psychology. I love how you frame that, because I know for a fact there's a lot of people, whether they be business people or entrepreneurs or salespeople, that go into a client and they try to prove that they are worthy. It's almost like they're trying to push, and they still try to ethically persuade, but it's almost like a push. Hey, this is how good we are. This is our track record. This is what we stand for, etc., etc. Versus if you just let go of that and say, I'm just going to be really authentic, right? And disassociate from the perfect outcome of, I don't have to get this deal. I'd love to get the deal, but if we're not a match, we're not a match. But almost say, well, if we don't get this, I'm going to say, hey, as you've done, we're new in our journey. We're just starting out. We don't know whether we're going to be a right match for you, but here's one thing I do know. We're going to work with you and we're going to deliver some fantastic outcomes, but I can't guarantee X, Y, and Z. And it's no longer a push. It's almost like a pull. And so there's a lack of neediness. And in sales, I often say sometimes people come across with a bit of commission breath, and there's a desperation that's part of that conversation, which is quite off-putting to the person you're speaking with. So I love the way you framed that. So one of the things, Matt, you talk about is three mistakes, or mistakes that often ruin sales, and one of those is probably trying to create something and make yourself sound better and bigger than you actually are. What are some other mistakes that you've learned through your journey that we can now weave into the psychology part that might be stopping sales or preventing them?
Yeah, well, and that's actually how my book is structured. It's structured in three parts, each tackling one of the key mistakes, and
Hmm.
that's how our trainings are structured. And the biggest mistake is what I just mentioned, that people tend to focus on how can I motivate my customers instead of asking the question, why not? What
Yeah.
is holding people back? And this is by far the biggest aha moment people have as they listen to me speak, as they work with us, go through our training, because it completely shifts the perspective. Let me give you a couple of examples. So there are many psychological barriers that you have to uncover, those reasons why not.
Yeah.
We like to teach people about four. The biggest one is the biggest sales and conversion killer is uncertainty.
Yeah.
That's what these CMOs were experiencing with me, walking into that room, and they were uncertain. Well, this guy probably has no credibility, no experience, and so on. Well, uncertainty can occur anywhere, and it does. Every buying decision is filled with uncertainties, and
Mm.
you, as a great sales professional, you have to understand those uncertainties.
Mm.
And a beautiful example, we worked with this insurance company, helping them refine their online process, online funnel of buying car insurance. And so we tried to uncover all the uncertainties, all the barriers standing in the way. And at one moment, they were asking, is the car that you want to insure, is it a new car or a used car?
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like a reasonable question, right? But as we spoke with customers, they told us, well, I have this 2-month-old car. To me, it's a brand new car, but is it actually a new car or is it a used car?
Yeah.
And so what happens if I come across a moment when you ask me this question, I have no answer? I'll just quit the process,
Yeah.
because I won't dare, choosing one of the two options, because maybe half year later, the insurance company will tell me, but look here, you lied in your application. And it's, you can have the best product ever, you can have the best insurance ever, but if there is just one uncertainty that kind of jumps at you and holds you, you won't buy,
Yeah.
you won't carry on in the process. And so this is one of the barriers. So and you can see this on this exact example, that the product can be amazing. You can add more benefits, you can give me discounts, but if there is this one uncertainty, I won't buy from you. And that's why uncovering and removing those uncertainties is just so much easier, so cheaper, and so much more effective. So this is the first fundamental mistake: neglecting the psychological barriers and over focusing on motivation. Well, I can tell you about the other two if you want, or we can stick with the barriers, and I can tell you about more barriers.
I'd love to talk about the other ones as well, but I love your focus there, because there's a lot of people in sales that try to focus on motivation, and it's probably to their own detriment, because they're not understanding psychology of people, in that the vast majority of people are not necessarily motivated to move towards something of pleasure. They're more motivated to avoid a level of pain, and pain in many cases equals uncertainty. So if you're uncertain, you're just going to stay where you are. You're not going to move even though there might be a benefit to you moving forward, you're going to be really reluctant to do so.
Well, I think our premise is that most of the time, if you get a chance to speak with a prospect, it means that they are already motivated enough.
Yes.
And to us, it doesn't really matter if they want to mitigate a pain they have, or they want to, I don't know, get to something more pleasurable with your product, with your service. The bottom line is that their motivation is high enough. But for instance, if you feel like I'm trying to sell to you, what is your reaction? You will push back, right? And that's another psychological barrier.
Yeah.
The product can be wonderful. The prospect might be ready to buy. But if you feel like I'm pushing you to something, you will fight against me. I'll give you an example. I mentioned this in the book. I had this one meeting with actually this financial advisor who gave me the opportunity to conduct this first training. So we kept in touch, and then he went to a different company, and he reached out 2 years ago or so, and so we met, got this coffee, and then sometime, throughout the conversation, he asked me, "So, are you still with this company?" I was like, "Yeah. Well, I'm quite happy with their services." And then he told me, "Well, by the end of this meeting, you won't be their client anymore." What did that trigger? Well, I thought to myself, no way I ever become your client. Even though what he was telling me about their products, about their services was wonderful. It was actually much better than my actual company.
Yeah.
But just this feeling that he's pushing me to something made me revolt. And this is a tricky dynamic in sales, because your job is to actually advise the clients, to show them what is the right path for you, my dear prospect. So what to do with it? We, on the one hand, know we have to do it. On the other hand, we know that it creates, it's called psychological reactance. And but there are just easy ways to bypass psychological reactance. Let me give you an example. So let's say that I'm trying to sell you something, and so I can either tell you, well, Darren, look, based on everything you told me, this is the option for you. It's a no-brainer. You should get it, because it will solve all your troubles, plus it will give you this and that. And if you decide by the end of the week, you'll get a discount. Well, what does that create? Yeah, you feel like, oh man, it sounds good, but I don't want to see you anymore ever again. Or what I could do is, well, Darren, look, based on everything you told me, I think this is a great option for you, because it will solve this problem XYZ, plus it will give you these additional benefits. But of course, at the end of the day, the choice is entirely yours. What just happened? I told you the exact same thing, right? I gave you the exact same advice. But then at the end, I handed the control back to you with this, and it's called the "but you are free" effect.
Yeah.
And this "but you are free" effect, it's a thing that scientists have studied for years. And it turns out, on average, when they conducted dozens and dozens of studies, it increases your persuasiveness, I mean, the effectiveness of your pitch by roughly 50% if you just add these
50%.
few. Yeah, there was a meta study that studied, I think it was 42 different studies that focused on the "but you are free" effect. It's just so overlooked and so powerful, and it's deeply rooted in psychology. Or, still talking, but you want to ask me a question, please go ahead, because
Well,
if you get me started on consumer psychology, I can never
no,
stop.
I love that, and I'm deep into this as well. So, and I teach this a lot. That, and I often ask salespeople who loves to be sold to, and it's very, very rare that I ever get a salesperson. I think in the last 12 months, I might have two that have said, you know what, I love to be sold to because I want to analyze how they're doing it and the psychology behind it. But just about everybody likes to be able to buy. And so giving the opportunity to the prospective customer the possibility of making a educated purchasing decision, it can actually remove and mitigate a lot of the obstacles, objections, and give them the power to decide. I wanted to ask you though, and particularly in the areas of insurance and finance and so forth, where salespeople may be under pressure to hit a quota. How do we manage or balance the urgency with we want to be able to close a sale, give the person the opportunity to make a purchase with the opportunity of, but you are free to decide. So in actual words, in actuality, stepping back from it and giving them the opportunity to purchase it. How do we balance that? Because there'll be people listening to this who can understand that intellectually, but they say on the other hand, Darren, Matt, you don't understand. I'm under pressure here to number by the end of this week, by the end of this month, and I've only got a finite number of customers, so I've got to try and get them to be motivated to close the sale.
And this is the beauty of it, because research shows, and now it's not just research, it's my 10 years of experience, teaching this stuff to salespeople. Your conversion will go up. It just doesn't feel, you might not feel very comfortable doing this for the first couple of times, because you'll think, well, this person will just walk away. But the opposite is true. They will stick around, and more people will actually say yes.
Mm.
So it's just counterintuitive. That's it. But it will help your bottom line. All these things, they are just simple, tiny changes that will achieve two things, actually three things. You will feel more comfortable in the sales process as the salesperson, because it's not comfortable for nearly anyone to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So
Yeah.
you will feel much more comfortable. Your customer will feel much more comfortable in the sales process, and your results will go up. And this is what we have seen with just countless companies, countless salespeople. Can I give you another example?
Please, absolutely.
So still talking about this psychological reactance. So if we feel pressured into doing something, we tend to fight back, push back.
Yeah.
Well, we had this group of salespeople sitting in a training. It was actually conducted by one of our licensed trainers, and this one salesperson, he had been with the company for I think 10, 15 years, and his average conversion rate was 16%. They were selling water heaters, and the salesperson, I mean, his philosophy was, well, I first meet with the client, I try to analyze their situation, and then I prepare an offer that's perfectly suited to their needs, so that they don't overpay, so that the device they get is just the right fit for exactly what they need. And then he learned about something called an alternative of choice. Because once again, if and let's come back to this kind of role play we did just a minute ago. So Darren, based on everything you told me, there are two options which I think would be wonderful for you. the first option is XYZ, or the second option is ABC. In my opinion, the second option is even better suited to your needs, but of course the choice is yours. What happens if you just give the person two options? Their perception shifts from a yes-no decision to a decision about option A or option B. And this is what this salesperson sitting in our training actually decided to try. And so he started sending out, instead of one perfect offer, he started sending one perfect offer and then a second offer, which was more expensive, so a more expensive device. And magic happened. His average conversion jumped from 16 to 28%.
Yeah.
And he reported that so many people actually decided to go for the more expensive option. Just psychology. When I feel pressured to get something, if you just limit my choices, you push me to something, I have the tendency to look around, to shop for other options, to compare things.
Yeah.
And it's just ruining your sales performance because you haven't understood the psychological barrier on your customer side and you haven't addressed and removed it. So that's the power of asking the question, why not, and removing the barriers.
I love that. And as you were talking, I was just remembering some of the stuff in predictably irrational that they talk about. A lot of organizations will have three offers. They'll have a premium offer, a dirt cheap offer, and one in the middle, which is where most of the people tend to move towards, which is the ideal profitability matrix for the organization. But they will have a percentage of the customers that go on either end of that. But giving the customer that choice and putting, I guess, the buying decision in the hands of that customer is really powerful without the salesperson pushing them in one direction or another.
And this is something I call context. And this actually beautifully illustrates the second key mistake that salespeople make. Because motivation is important. What we claim is that removing barriers is more important than increasing motivation. But of course, you want to make your products look attractive, your services, to make them look appealing to customers. And your natural tendency is to increase motivation with two things: reducing the price and piling up more benefits.
Yeah.
Well, and what we say is that, I mean, that might work sometimes, but it costs you a lot of margins and a lot of money, and it might not even be so effective. So instead of doing this, instead of just focusing on discounts and benefits, work with context. So what is context? Context is the way you present your options. Context are the words that you use. It's the order in which you give information. And what you just mentioned is a beautiful example of how we can just shift context so that it helps make your products look or sound more appealing. Let me give you a couple of examples. And I've done this little experiment with thousands of people already in my keynotes and in my workshops. So I divide them into two groups. I let them scan a QR code, and the first group, their job is, they have this task. So imagine you go to, you want to get a pizza, and so they're experimenting with this customization of your own pizza. So you're starting with just a tomato and mozzarella base, and please take the ingredients you want to add on to your pizza. And there's a list of 14 ingredients.
Yep.
Each ingredient costs 50 cents. And the second group, I told them, well, you want to get a pizza tonight, and you go to this pizza place, and they're experimenting with a new customization model. You're starting with a fully loaded pizza with 14 ingredients. Take those ingredients that you want to remove from your pizza. Each ingredient you remove saves you 50 cents. So basically the math is exactly the same. In a rational world, both groups should on average end up with the same number of ingredients.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. But In reality, across those thousands of people who filled out this experiment, the first group on average ends up with 2.7 ingredients. The second group ends up with on average 6.15 ingredients. Nearly a threefold increase just because I changed the context.
Yeah.
We taught this to a telecommunications company, and they implemented it in their points of sales. And one specific salesperson, I mean, he fell in love with this topic. It's called choose versus remove, or how you set the default. And when selling phones, mobile phones, there is some pieces of accessory that the customer can also buy. And so what he would do before is that, well, here's your new iPhone, and so which of these accessories would you like to get with your iPhone? After he learned about this principle, he would shift the conversation to, well, look, this is all the accessories that you could get with your iPhone. Just let's go through them and let me know which ones you don't want. And he saw a 32% increase in the average amount sold, and I think a 17% in the average number of accessories that a customer bought. Didn't change the product, didn't change the price. He just shifted context, and context is your super weapon, because it doesn't cost you anything, and it is just so powerful to just play with context to make your offers look more appealing.
And it's almost like a bundling methodology where you're putting more into it, and the value is of a certain amount. And when people see that, they're more reluctant to try to remove things, versus if you start with the bare base and add things to it, then they're thinking, oh, if I add that, that's going to increase the cost. If you add this one, it's going to increase the cost. No, I think I'll just stay with the same base price or base model. But if I add all the things and say, well, which ones don't you want, and you start taking them out, it's almost like, well, hang on, no, I want to have that. I want to hang on to it. So they're more likely to say
because
yes.
yeah, because when I ask you, well, choose those that you do want, it's as if I were asking you, well, which accessories or which pizza ingredients you for sure want to have on your pizza. If I ask you just remove those that you don't want, it's as if I were asking you which ingredients you for sure don't want to have on the pizza. And then there are ingredients in the gray zone, which you don't really care. But in the first case, they don't end up on your pizza or in your package of accessories. In the second case, they do. And the just playing with context, it's beautiful. Let me give you one last example.
I love that. Yeah.
And this is a project we worked with on with telecommunications company, and they ran this campaign to their customer base who had no mobile data. So they would send them a text message. We're giving you a package of 2 gigabytes of data for free. Just reply yes, and we'll activate it for you.
Yep.
The conversion was quite low. And then we came in and we helped them redesign this message, just changing a few words. And the second message said, we've just given you a package of 2 gigabytes of data for free. Just reply yes, and we'll activate it for you. What changed? In the first case, it was like, well, reply yes, and then we will give you something. The second message was, you have just received something, and if you don't reply yes, you'll miss out on it. And the conversion went up by roughly 100%.
Wow.
Again, the product stayed the same, the price stayed the same. We just shifted the context. It's just so powerful.
It's it's simply a change of well, as you say, context, a few small words that get changed, and the way you actually put that together in a sentence that alters the psychology of the person or the consumer that's going to be making that decision. That's it's really powerful.
And this is psychology.
I can't not ask. And we want people to grab a copy of the book, obviously, but the third mistake that we tend to make.
Yeah, the third mistake is that whenever you want to increase the effectiveness of, say, your phone calls, your emails, your face-to-face conversations, people have this natural tendency to jump to solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean? So for example, a call script or a phone call, well, you see that it's not really performing well. So your natural tendency is, oh, what if we just try to open the call with, let's say, is this a bad time? And shift that to, is this a good time? Or I just present myself as, I know, a CEO instead of something else. We have the tendency to jump to solutions. And it's basically as if we were shooting in the dark. And what we say that, well, hold your horses. Don't even think of solutions, because with your communication, there are only three things you're able to change: how the person feels, what they think, and what they do. And this is what you have to be crystal clear about first before you even start thinking of solutions. So what people should do, and I explain this really in detail in the book, you should first split the customer interaction into stages. And for each stage, you have to clearly define, it's called the behavioral goals. What do I want Darren to think, feel, and do? Then you have to ask yourself the question, why not? Why will Darren not think, feel, and do what I want him to think, feel, and do?
Yep.
This is the first mistake, so uncovering the barriers. These first two steps, because our methodology is called the SERVE method. So it's set behavioral goals, the first step. Uncover the barriers. And if you have done these first two steps, you have basically created your persuasion plan. How am I going to persuade Darren to do something? And only then should you start thinking about solutions. So as you remove the barriers, so first your solutions should aim at removing those barriers that you've identified, and only at the end should you start focusing on motivation through the lens of playing around with context. So this is the third mistake, our urge, our tendency to jump to solutions too soon.
And it might be that people are really passionate about a product or a service or a solution, and they just ooze that. But it comes across as maybe over enthusiastic or over motivational, over the top, and people go, "Whoa, just hold your horses, slow down, slow down." So when you're talking to sales teams, organizations in any industry, how much of it is we need to learn to have patience. We need to learn to understand that people, consumers, organizations, they'll go through their own buying journey, their own buying cycle, and they'll make a purchase when they're ready to make a purchase, not when you want them to make a purchase. So
Well,
understanding that.
I think what I'm talking about, I don't want the message to be just sit back, relax, and wait for the customer to come and buy from you. Not at all. I mean, you are in charge. Your job as a great salesperson is to craft the customer journey, and that's what how you should think of sales. Because a sales interaction is not a one-time kind of encounter. You are, as a great salesperson, you are building the customer journey. And you should be building it intentionally, by being clear about how you want people to think, feel, and do, what might be the barriers, and so on. So to answer your question, we try to be very pragmatic, because also our approach, our methodology, it's not a strategic sales framework. This is a tactical sales framework, because you can, here I have a challenger sale book. You can, be trained in challenger sale. You can be trained in consultative selling. You can be trained in whatever, spin selling. All those are fine. But the SERVE method actually teaches you how to deliver this strategic framework in the best possible way. And this is what we try to teach organizations. So whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever your strategy is, that's fine. Let us show you how you can be more successful with this strategic framework, whatever you decided it to be.
Yeah, love that. And when it comes down to whether you're selling a in a strategic situation, you're selling to a committee, you're selling to a board, you're selling to an individual. At the end of the day, we're doing business with people, and there's no decision that's going to be made unless and until you can get into somebody's psychology and have them believe that the decision they're about to make is the best decision for their benefit, not for your benefit. And as more
Oh
salespeople
man,
understood that,
absolutely.
the better.
Absolutely. Because people don't buy when the offer makes sense. They buy when the decision feels right.
Mm,
And this is the essence of what we teach,
yeah.
because we just so over focus on the offer to make sense. But if the decision doesn't feel right, I don't care about your perfect offer.
No. And you've said that through a number of examples that we've had this fantastic proposal and it meets all the needs, all the perceived needs, but yet the customer didn't make a decision. It's because it didn't feel right for them at that particular time because we didn't create the environment where they did feel this was the right thing they could do at that moment. And as soon as we do that, then all of a sudden magic happens.
Absolutely.
Magic happens. Matt, absolutely love this conversation. I can't believe it's nearly an hour we've been speaking. For people who are listening who would like to learn more about you, but also learn more about MindWorx, but more importantly, get access to the book, The Hidden Yes. Where can they find you? Where can they connect? And where's the best place to get access to the book?
You can find the book on Amazon, across the globe, in whatever format you prefer. So be it an ebook, paperback, hardcover, or audiobook. So Amazon, just search for The Hidden Yes by Matt Sucha. And if you want to get in touch with me, a couple of options. Reach out on LinkedIn, Matt Sucha, once again, or the easiest to remember is thehiddenyes.com, which is the website for the book. And also you can learn more about me, and you can get in touch with me. So these are the two places. Of course, we have our company website, which is mindworx.net. But these are the two places we can get directly in touch with me.
Love it. Love it. I'll make sure those are in the show notes for people to get access to, and I highly recommend people connecting with you. Matt, it's been great having you on the podcast. If there was one parting principle or parting piece of advice you'd like to leave people with that may help them between now and Christmas into the new year, what would that be?
And many of your listeners know the book Start With Why by
Mm,
Simon Sinek. I might pass as a bold or controversial, but I don't really like this concept. But why am I mentioning it is that my final piece of advice is start with why not. And ask yourself, what is holding my customers back? What's standing in the way? Uncover those psychological barriers, address them, remove them, and you will see magic will start happening. Because it's your customers don't need more reasons to say yes. They
mm.
need few reasons to say no.
Love that. Love that. Mate, and it might be controversial because Simon's written a few books, but I love that and it makes a lot of sense. Trying to ask the question, why not? I love it. Love it. Matt, absolute pleasure. I know it's relatively earlier in the morning where you are, so have a fantastic day and thanks for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an amazing pleasure.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.